The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
While you're here, go ahead and sub up. Welcome. You are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Today we find out what's new in Cincinnati. We're talking about the hard knock participant Cincinnati Bengals. And so today on the program, we'll be talking about what's new in Cincinnati. And I think this is a football team that's going in the right direction. A lot will hinge upon the shoulders of starting quarterback Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle. He's going to have to take that next step. But we're not here to discuss the fortunes of the Cincinnati Bengals. We're here to talk about what's new in Cincinnati. And so before we can get to what's new, we got to get rid of the old in Cincinnati. But before we even do that, let's take care of a little business. This is via YouTube subscriber Yasin Warsame. And so he was able to get the Cincinnati Bengals up. We'll move on now. Bengals are our focus. And if you want your team or any other team for that matter to be next up on this program, simply leave a comment at the bottom of this video. Have to be the first one, of course, stating next and the team that you want to see next here on the What's New In segment. So let's move on and get to Cincinnati Bengals football. And we're talking about out with the old in Cincinnati. So in order to go out with the old, in with the new, whatever the case may be, of course, I need the assistance of not only my big board behind me, but my handy dandy pointer. I've got both. I'm ready to talk Cincinnati Bengals football, and we're starting out with the old in Cincinnati. This is going to be a relatively quick video. Again, this is a really good football team on the cusp of doing something big, and they're going in the right direction, and I love the way the Cincinnati Bengals build this thing up. They started from the ground up. And it looked like Marvin Lewis was a cat with 9 lives, and he was down to his last life. And he found a way to resurrect this franchise and breathe life into the Cincinnati Bengals. And the way he's been able to do it is taking care of their own. In this offseason, the Bengals didn't make a concerted effort to go out and snatch up other people's free agents. What they did was they signed up all of their own important free agents. And I think they went out and they re-signed just about their whole team, it seems like, in this offseason. They did a wonderful job of holding on to their stuff. And then what they also do a magnificent job of, and I think they're one of the best in the league at this, is drafting, getting young, talented players that fit what they want to do and bringing them into Cincinnati. I think over the last 3 seasons, you could make a case that the Cincinnati Bengals have had the most impressive drafts of any team in the National Football League. And I'm thinking that this Cincinnati Bengals team is where they are because of the moves they've made in the draft, getting a guy like Andy Dalton when no one was talking about that quarterback out of TCU, getting a guy like A.J. Green and pairing him with Andy Dalton. And look, these are moves that go under the radar. You get A.J. Green and then you double back in the second round and get Andy Dalton. And those two have been making beautiful music together since entering the league together 2 seasons ago. And so these guys are building it up the right way in Cincinnati. And so let's talk about out with the old. There's not a lot here on this board, as you can see. Bengals kept it relatively quiet in this offseason. So no head coaching changes. Marvin Lewis still your man in charge as the head coach. You look at offensive coordinator Jay Gruden, still intact, and also defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer still on board. So no changes there. So we go straight to quarterback Bruce Gradkowski. And I think one of the most underrated positions in the National Football League is the backup quarterback. A lot of people kind of brush the backup quarterback off as if they don't matter. Just grab one of these retread quarterbacks from around the league, stick them on your roster, teach them the playbook, and teach them how to hold the clipboard. That's all fine and dandy until that quarterback goes down and that guy actually has to take the cap off, hand off the clipboard, and actually put his helmet on and get in the game. Then you have problems. And they've seen how having a backup quarterback that is inefficient can really send your season into a downward spiral. Look at the Steelers from a season ago. They were playing really good football, their best football of the season. Roethlisberger goes down. Charlie Batch has to assume the role after Leftwich goes down, and they can't win football games. They lose to the Cleveland Browns, a team that they annually beat, and so they struggled without Ben Roethlisberger in that lineup. And we've seen the Bears struggle after Jay Cutler goes down. We've seen numerous teams struggle. And this team had a scare last year in the preseason. Andy Dalton went down, and everyone in Cincinnati was holding their collective breath. He was okay, so you dodged a bullet. But you always felt comfortable with Bruce Gradkowski behind Andy Dalton. He's jumped ship. He's sleeping with the enemy now. He's now in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. And so you got to go out and find yourself a backup quarterback. But Bruce Gradkowski, someone that offered you some comfort at that backup quarterback position, is no longer there. You look at running back Brian Leonard, one of these hybrid running backs that you could also look at as a fullback, a guy that's pretty big, pretty burly, not going to confuse him for Adrian Peterson, not going to confuse him for Chris Johnson, more like Toby Gerhart, a big, burly, white back in this league that can catch it out of the backfield, that can run it, a solid guy that I think is in Tampa Bay now, and he was going to be reunited with his college coach at Rutgers in Greg Schiano in Tampa Bay. And so he's been solid for you. You could always count on Brian Leonard to come in the game, run the football a little bit, catch it out of the backfield, and block on third downs in pass pro. Thought he was a solid guy for you over the years. You're going to miss Brian Leonard in some shape, way, or form in 2013 and beyond. You look at kicker Josh Brown. Solid kicker. You had to bring him on board after you had some injuries to that position. And I thought Josh Brown came in and was magnificent for you. He made some clutch kicks, including the one that kicked you into the postseason versus the Pittsburgh Steelers in that game where it was a knockdown, drag-out slugfest where two teams were just not giving an inch defensively. You made the big play at the end of the game, and then Josh Brown came and sealed it with a big-time kick to win that football game and send you to the postseason. And so Josh Brown made some big kicks for you, but in this day and age, everyone's looking for their own young, big-legged kicker. Josh Brown no longer on your roster. You're looking for that guy to come in and replace Josh Brown as the next big thing at the kicker position for the Cincinnati Bengals. You look at safety Nate Clements. Solid safety, a guy that converted from the cornerback position, and that's what we do in this league. We take old cornerbacks that can tackle, who aren't afraid to go in and stick their nose and get dirty in the run support game as well as tackling in the secondary, can make a little bit of plays with their hands and have ball skills. You take those guys and you move them over to safety. We've seen it done time and time and time again. And Nate Clements was that type of player for the Cincinnati Bengals coming over from San Francisco a couple of years ago. He was solid, played some cornerback, played some safety. But once again, getting up there in age, and in this league, you can always find guys who are younger that can do what some of these veterans can do. Some of these guys are irreplaceable. You know, a guy like Ed Reed, he's a veteran. He's up there in age, but Ed Reed brings a distinct skill to the table. Nate Clements, not so much. He's a guy that's going to tackle, try to make some plays on the football, but no one's afraid of Nate Clements back there at the safety position. You went out and got some guys in the draft and in free agency that you thought could help at the safety position. Nate Clements no longer on your roster. You look at safety Chris Crocker. Here's a guy that has been on your roster for about 5 seasons, solid, and he's been a really good defender for you. And I thought he stepped up and played really good football for you in 2012. He had 3 interceptions. He was all over the place. And I said to myself, is this the same Chris Crocker that I've seen in Cincinnati for 5 or 6 or 7 years? How old is this guy? Isn't he like 35 or something? I'm like, what is he doing out there running around? He looked like a young man out there running around, making plays. I thought he really was big for you in 2012. But once again, you're starting to push those older guys out of the door to make way for some of these newer, younger players that are hungry, that are looking to get onto the field. And so neither Nate Clements nor Chris Crocker are back on this football team in 2013. You look at linebacker Thomas Howard, solid weak side linebacker. You can't put him at strong side. You can't put him in the middle. Here's a prototypical weak side linebacker in this league. You stick him over the tight end, and this guy can move in space, very fast, quick, and athletic. Not a big hammer in the run game, but that's not what you have Thomas Howard on this roster for, or at least had him on this roster for. He was here to cover those tight ends, to stick with these guys that are hybrids in this league. And he did a really good job of doing that for you in his couple of years in Cincinnati. He got injured, missed essentially all of 2012. He's not back in Cincinnati, so you're looking to fill that void at weak side linebacker. I'm pretty sure you will find a very viable candidate to do just that. You look at linebacker Manny Lawson. Here's a guy that I will never understand. I've talked about this at great lengths about the enigma that is Manny Lawson, a guy that is highly athletic, huge at 6'7", runs a 4.5 40, can do all the things, extremely long. You look at his measurables, and they're off the charts, but it never translates to the field the way it's supposed to. And Manny Lawson is now in Buffalo, and I will never understand why Manny Lawson isn't better than he is. He's no longer on your football team. He's in Buffalo. You look at linebacker Dan Scooter. Here's a core special teamer off to San Francisco. This guy isn't someone you want in the game playing the linebacker position, but on special teams, he's a demon. That's why the San Francisco 49ers came after him. They got him. They wrestled him away from you. Now you got to find yourself a new fiend on the special teams unit because Dan Scooter was that guy for you. You look at defensive tackle Pat Sims. Solid defender in the run game, not going to get pressure on the quarterback per se, but a good piece on a defensive line in a rotational depth capacity, a guy that you do not want to start, but someone that you put in the game in a rotational capacity can really help your team. He's a guy that the motor generally runs hot, and so you're getting good effort out of Pat Sims. Solid defender once again, but again, you can find other guys in the league to do what Pat Sims was doing for you. And so at the end of the day, Pat Sims, now in Oakland, no longer a Cincinnati Bengal. And so that's out with the old with the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's go in with the new now with the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, so now we're in with the new with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I talked about the backup quarterback position being important in this league. And so they did not hesitate, did the Cincinnati Bengals, to try to fill that backup role. You start with quarterback John Skelton. I do not like John Skelton. I was an advocate of John Skelton before the season started last year, before he threw up all over himself and continued to regurgitate all over himself in 2012 with the Arizona Cardinals. He was part of the group that got Ken Wisenhunt fired in Arizona, and I am no longer on the John Skelton bandwagon. I do not think this guy is a viable option at the quarterback position in this league. As a backup, I guess he can fit in perfectly fine. Maybe this guy can come in. He's shown the propensity to come in games late and help you win a football game. He did it in Arizona numerous times where he had to come in for an injured Kevin Kolb and won football games. But as a starter for a 4 or 5 week stretch, I do not trust John Skelton with my football team. And that's how I measure a quarterback, a backup quarterback. Can I trust you to come in the game and get it done? Maybe Skelton can do that. But can I also trust you for a 4-week stretch? I don't think John Skelton is a guy that I trust over 4 weeks with my football team to just get a 2-2 mark. I'm not sure about John Skelton any longer. You look at quarterback Josh Johnson, scrambling quarterback. He's been around the league, Tampa Bay, San Francisco. He's now in Cincinnati. I don't really know what Josh Johnson is as a quarterback. I haven't seen enough of him in regular season action, haven't seen enough of him in the preseason. I know this guy has a strong arm. I know this guy can move around and he's mobile, but I'm not sure what Josh Johnson brings to the table. I definitely don't trust Josh Johnson. I'd much rather go with the evil I know than the evil I don't know. And so if you had to pick between one of these two quarterbacks to be your backup, I'd go with Skelton just because I know what I'm getting out of John Skelton. I know that this guy isn't someone that I want starting. I know that this guy isn't someone that I want to have to play extensively on this football team, but I know that if I put him in situations to succeed, If I keep him clean, he can throw the football around the field and complete passes to guys. He did it in Arizona when he was kept clean. That offensive line in Arizona was a mess to his defense. However, you still cannot conduct yourself as an NFL quarterback the way he did, turning the football over and really losing games for your football team. But at the end of the day, I know what John Skelton is. And the unknown scares me with Josh Johnson. So even though he's a scrambling quarterback, very mobile, athletic, big arm, I still don't know what this guy can do in the National Football League. I think the preseason will be very telling for both of these quarterbacks. If Josh Johnson comes in, figures out this playbook, and plays better, outshines John Skelton in the preseason, wouldn't be surprised if he gets the nod over Skelton in this preseason on this roster. You look at guard Mike Pollock, solid offensive guard in this league. Not a guy you necessarily want to start. He's been a starter in this league, but I don't think he's a starter quality guard in this league. But I think he's someone that can help you with depth on your offensive line, and I expect him to make a push to make this roster as a guy that can play multiple positions on this offensive line, playing both left and right guard. You look at tight end Alex Smith. This is a blocking tight end. You need blocking tight ends in this league. I say it all the time. Every team needs a blocking tight end. Alex Smith will be exactly that for you. You wrestled him away from a divisional foe in the Cleveland Browns. He's now on your roster. Look for Alex Smith to be essential in your run game. You went out and got Giovanni Bernard in the draft. You need someone to block for him at the tight end position. Tyler Eifert, not the most ideal blocker. Orson Charles, not the most ideal blocker. Jermaine Gresham, not the most ideal blocker. So someone has to block, right? That's your man right there. Alex Smith is your new blocking tight end. You look at linebacker James Harrison. Here's a guy coming over from the Steelers. He's now sleeping with the enemy. He got in the bed with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I don't know what James Harrison has left in the tank. This will be very interesting to see because I have him listed as a linebacker, and the next person up on this list is listed as a linebacker as well. But I don't think either of these guys will be playing with their hands out of the dirt. I think both of these guys will be at defensive end with their hands in the dirt. This is a 4-3 defensive look that the Cincinnati Bengals employ. And so I expect both of these guys, if they make this roster, I think Harrison is a shoo-in to make this roster. If he doesn't look like he's 50 years old, I thought at times last year he looked like a old, battered defensive end / outside linebacker in Pittsburgh. And so he's a guy that has dealt with some injuries over the last couple of years. If he's healthy, he's a dangerous man. If he's not, I don't know if James Harrison can help you. I'm anxious to see what he has left in the tank. But this is a guy that can get to the quarterback. He uses that leverage to get under the pads of tackles and get to the quarterback, and then uses that speed to get around the edge. Does he still possess that speed? That's a big question. Can he stay healthy? That's the other question. Want to see what James Harrison is going to be in Cincinnati. You look at linebacker Aaron Maben. Here's another guy. He's been a project around this league after being drafted in the first round by the Buffalo Bills out of Penn State. He has not worked out in several different stops. Buffalo, New York with the Jets, has not worked out. Someone wants to make this guy into a pass rushing specialist. They haven't been able to do it yet. Marvin Lewis is going to try his hand at it. We'll see if Aaron Maben fits. The good thing about both of these guys, Harrison and Maben, you don't need these guys. These are both guys that you have as extras. These are guys that you have on your roster as incentives, extra incentives to get to the quarterback. You don't have to have these guys. You still have Michael Johnson. You still got Geno Atkins. You still have guys that can get to the quarterback. Carlos Dunlap. You don't have to have these guys get to the quarterback. You have a plethora of guys that can do that. And so you went out and you also drafted Margus Hunt as well. And so these guys don't have to. That's a luxury for you. Those are luxury linebackers / defensive ends. If they get to the quarterback, great. If they don't, we don't need them. It's a really good look for the Cincinnati Bengals in that regard. So that's in with the new in terms of guys that you went out and acquired through free agency. Now let's look at your draft picks. And if you're looking for a breakdown, an extensive breakdown of this draft of the Cincinnati Bengals, or any other team in the National Football League, I will turn you to the 2013 NFL Draft wrap-up series. I've done one for every team, including the Cincinnati Bengals. And if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of every single player in this draft, 2013 NFL Draft Wrap-Up is where I will send you. So you look at tight end Tyler Eifert out of Notre Dame in the first round. Here's a guy that's going to be a mismatch nightmare. You're hoping you put him on the field with Jermaine Gresham. That could be a nasty tandem at the tight end position. Running back Giovanni Bernard, you're looking for a guy to man up that running back position. That's your guy right there. Defensive end Marcus Hunt in the second round. Safety Sean Williams in the third round. Linebacker Sean Porter in the fourth round. Offensive tackle Tanner Hawkinson in the fifth round. Running back Rex Burkhead in the sixth round. Wide receiver Kobe Hamilton in the sixth round. Offensive tackle Reed Fraggle in the seventh round. And rounding out your draft, center TJ Johnson also in the seventh round. So you go from guys that have a really good chance to locks to make this roster to those who are trying to do everything in their power to scratch the surface on someone's NFL roster, if not here in Cincinnati. I'm talking about undrafted rookie free agents. Let's get into these players and see who is on this roster in training camp trying to make this team as an undrafted rookie free agent. You start with defensive back Ontario McCaleb out of Auburn, defensive tackle Larry Black out of Indiana, defensive back Terrence Brown out of Stanford, linebacker Jordan Campbell out of New Mexico Highlands, wide receiver Roy Roundtree out of Michigan, linebacker Jason DeManchi out of Southern Illinois, kicker Quinn Sharp out of Oklahoma State, defensive tackle Terrence Stevens out of Stanford, defensive back Troy Stoudemire out of Minnesota, offensive guard John Sullen out of Auburn, linebacker Bruce Taylor out of Virginia Tech, and rounding out the group, wide receiver Tyrone Guard out of Eastern Kentucky. So these are guys who are looking to crack this roster. We'll see in Cincinnati. Marvin Lewis is not afraid to pull the trigger on one or two of these guys. And so if they come in, work extremely hard, this is a very young football team. Very young. The Bengals do it the right way. And so if one of these guys comes in, works hard, and shows this team and shows this coaching staff that, hey, I deserve a roster spot, don't be surprised to see one or two of these guys make the roster. And you know that Hard Knocks will be following around at least two of these guys, whether it be undrafted rookie free agents or draft picks. Hard Knocks is going to be following some of these guys around. So get to know these guys because you'll get to know them up close and personal on HBO's series Hard Knocks. So it should be a lot of fun looking at these young guys try to make this roster. So we go from in with the new to any philosophical changes in Cincinnati. So you look at any philosophical changes in Cincinnati, and really, they're not much to speak of. You look at the defensive side of the football, Marvin Lewis is your head coach, defensive-minded head coach, and his coordinator and Mike Zimmer, they've run a tight ship on the defensive side of the football. I really love what the Bengals have become defensively. They're one of the better defensive teams in the league, especially getting to the quarterback. This team can get to the quarterback from multiple positions on the field. Geno Atkins might be the best pass rushing defensive tackle in the league. You look out wide on the edges at defensive end, and you got Michael Johnson on one side, Carlos Dunlap on the other. These guys both apply pressure from the outsides, and so there is a plethora of guys that can get to the quarterback on his defense. You add a guy like Marcus Hunt and James Harrison to the mix, and it's just a parade of guys that can come into the game and get pressure on the quarterback. And that's what the Bengals have prided themselves on. Stopping the run, getting pressure on the quarterback, forcing you into third and long situations, and then forcing you into mistakes. And Reggie Nelson has played really well at the safety position, and so has Leon Hall. I thought that this Bengals team, they have played really well defensively, but this offense has to take the next step. Let's go to the offensive side of the football where you look at Andy Dalton, and that's what it all boils down to. Okay, same offensive coordinator in Jay Gruden. He's done a great job of bringing your quarterback, the red rifle, Andy Dalton, along very slowly. But now it's time for Andy Dalton to take that next step. We're going into year 3, and the Bengals have made the postseason in the first 2 seasons of his career, and he's done a wonderful job of managing the game and managing this football team. But when they need him to show up in the postseason, he just simply doesn't. and now he has to take that next step. Look, this division is there for the taking if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. The Steelers have fallen on hard times. Now, look, they're the Steelers, and they will bounce back. So don't expect the Steelers to be a 7-9, 8-8 team again in 2013. The Steelers will be the Steelers again in 2013. So you're going to have to contend with them. And then we all know about the Baltimore Ravens and them being the Super Bowl champions. Until someone knocks them off the top of that mountain, they have been crowned champions. And so it's going to take a lot for this Bengals team to overcome some of the obstacles in this division, but they can do it. They were right there on the cusp of winning this division a season ago, and I think they need to take that next step. How about getting a home playoff game? Start with that, because you traveling to Houston the last 2 seasons has not worked out well for you, and so there aren't any philosophical changes. Jay Gruden is going to continue to do what he has done on offense. The one thing I can say that will be a little different is that they should be able to run the football a little bit more effectively. You have Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. Now you bring on Giovanni Bernard, and that should be a nice 1-2 punch. A guy with a little bit of speed, and then Ben Jarvis Green Ellis doing the between the tackles thing should be a good combination for this offense in terms of running the football. But passing the ball, Tyler Eifert is going to add another dimension at the tight end position along with Jermaine Gresham. We know what A.J. Green is. He's a monster, and so he's going to continue to do his thing for this football team. I look for this offense to take that next step. You have the pieces now. Everything is in place. Multiple tight ends, multiple backs. If Mohamed Sanu can step up and be the guy you think he could be as the number 2 receiver, you'll have multiple receivers as well. I like what this Cincinnati Bengals team has done over the last 3 seasons to put themselves in this position. Now they need to take advantage of it. No changes in terms of philosophy on either side of the football. This is a team that just needs to be better at everything they do. And if they can do that, look out for the Cincinnati Bengals. And so that's what's new in Cincinnati.
Like the content? Want more? Sub up.